further ado, we have a special 8-minute video for you showing when Chuck and I received the Living Legacy Award at the Radio and Television Broadcasters Hall of Fame about a month ago. Watch.
Cleveland, early 1930s. A future Cleveland legend was in the making. The Terminal Tower Complex was dedicated. Oh, and little Charles Mitchell Shanowski was born June 28, 1934. Surprisingly, little Charles had a fairly normal childhood growing up in Cleveland's Southeast Side's Polish neighborhood. Some years later, in the mid-1940s, an event occurred that would greatly affect his life. He would now be joined by all his relatives returning from World War II. It was over. Oh, and little John Anthony Rinaldi was born in Cleveland's East Side's Italian neighborhood. This very same year, young Charles graduated from Harvard Elementary School on East 71st and Harvard. A few years later, when little John was about 4, little Charles was going to South High School, where he met his high school sweetheart, June. On September 22nd, 1956, Chuck and June were married, and if you do the math, the two lovebirds just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. For the next 8 years, Chuck worked in the foundry and went to night school. In 1960, he graduated with honors from National Radio School, receiving his first-class FCC license, and Chuck's TV career was on its way. He got a job as a summer replacement engineer at KYW Channel 3, where he and Barnaby sort of hit it off, and he also hit it off with a couple of other guys that summer at Channel 3, station announcer Ernie Anderson and writer-director Tom Conway. Chuck went to WJW TV8 in October of 1960. 2 years later, Anderson and Conway joined him, but in a short while, Tom changed his name to Tim and went on to McHale's Navy. And Ernie became someone called Goulardi.
What is that? Does this program go to Parma? Down with Bill Gordon. No, up with Bill Gordon. Bill Gordon played beautiful baseball out there. He was lousy. That's what I like. Pick it up so we can get a shot of it.
Chuck worked very closely with Ernie on the Goulardi shows, and the two became very close friends. At this time, Ernie wanted Chuck to join him on TV and literally had to force him to do so. And they did some outrageous things.
Parma, please.
Mr. Kriegel brought me a present.
Why, Chuck?
Gee whiz.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah. Gee whiz.
Oh.
Stripes on the top. Boy, oh boy, where'd you get them, Mr. Kriegel?
Oh, I had to drive all the way to the Heights for these.
Shaker?
Parma.
While this was going on, little John, now a big Goulardi fan, graduated as class president of John Adams High School in 1964 and began college at The Ohio State University. Then in 1966, Ernie shocked all of Cleveland and left for Hollywood to become the most famous, highest-paid announcer in broadcasting.
Their job, busting those who dump medical wastes in our waters. So cool over there, group.
Chuck then joined forces with TV's Houlihan the Weatherman, former F-80 jet fighter pilot, to begin
It's the Houlihan and Big Chuck Show.
And a national magazine proclaimed Little Charlie is Big Chuck now. The Houlihan and Big Chuck format was one that no one in the world had seen before.
You, sir, show us your Clark pet. Your Clark pet. Same to you, buddy.
But very soon after the show's beginning, they began to expand their cast of characters. Then, as destiny would have it, in 1969 it happened. Big Chuck, as producer of the show, met up with recent OSU graduate John Rinaldi. It was magic.
Here's Bridget, the midget, the queen of the blues.
Another character was added to the show, a real character. Little John, as Chuck dubbed him, was an instant hit. And soon, John got his first speaking part.
A half a head of lettuce.
Now, hold on a second. I'll be right back. Hey, Chuck.
Yeah.
Got a big knife?
A big knife? What for?
Oh, some big, dumb, ugly-looking jerk wants a half a head of lettuce. You believe that? And this fine gentleman would like the other half.
Once John started talking, there was no stopping him. John was so popular, he married his wife Sherry in 1975. TV newsman Neil Zerker covered the story for television. Do the math again. Yep, that's right. John and Sherry just celebrated their 31st wedding anniversary this year. The Houlihan and Big Chuck show was very successful for almost 13 years, even beating the Johnny Carson show in the Cleveland area ratings, the only local show in the country to do so.
Pepsi-Cola hits the spot, 12 full ounces, that's a lot. Twice as much for a nickel, too. Pepsi-Cola is the drink for you. Nickel, 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 nickel.
In 1979, Bob Houlihan Wells decided to leave the show and Cleveland for an executive TV job in Florida. Chuck decided to keep the show going with Little John.
Houlihan's not with us anymore. So what?
And Little John was thrilled and very humbled by the opportunity.
Oh, Hoolie, Cleveland was sad and blue the day they lost you. But let's give a cheer, because Little John is here!
A new era had begun, and the new Big Chuck and Little John show was born, September of 1979. And Chuck and John vowed to bring more class to the show. It didn't take Chuck long to figure out that viewers like slapstick, especially skits where John gets the short end.
Get out of here.
Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! I mean it! Wake up!
And Big Chuck took some abuse, too. Over the years, Chuck and John have produced many classic skits, like this stop-frame animation acclaimed by Hollywood's Ray Harryhausen as the best amateur animation in the world. The show was also featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and dozens of nationally known celebrities have appeared in their skits. And every once in a while, an old friend stops in to keep the legend going.
Hello, this is Tim Conway. I'd like to talk seriously about Big Chuck and Little John.
Been crazy.
Mr. Conway, you didn't seem to, Mr. Conway, when we said we needed a stool sample.
Right, yes, well,
That's what we meant.
got here. It's as much as I could do.
Several Big Chuck and Little John skits have appeared nationally on network shows. And after 27 years, Chuck and John are still entertaining greater Cleveland audiences with their skits. And always with that touch of class.
Who's the patient here having trouble passing gas?
In 1969, Chuck won the very first Emmy ever presented in Cleveland for the Kielbasa Kid, King, the Wonder Doll. Since then, Chuck and John have gone on to win a combined 41 Emmys for excellence in broadcasting and countless other awards. The combined Goulardi-Houlihan Big Chuck and Little John shows have been on television non-stop for 44 years, the longest-running show of its kind in the world. Big Chuck and Little John are indeed living legends and worthy of the award they're about to receive.